Hare Krishna. This morning we will read from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 13, text 56. Dhritarashtra quits home. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam
Om
Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jyamudirayat Nastresya Bhattesu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. I read first the Sanskrit. Tvastamaya Gunodhako Niruddha Karanasaya Nivahtita Kilahara Astistano Ivachala Tasyantarayo Maivabu Sanyasta Kila Karmana. Word for word translation. Vasta, being destroyed, Maya Guna, the modes of material nature, Udarka, after effects, Niruddha, being suspended, Karana Asaya, the senses and the mind, Nivartita, stopped, Akila, all, Ahara, food for the senses, Aste is sitting, Stanu, immovable, Eva, like, Achala, fixed, Tasya, his, Antaraya, hindrances, Maeva, never like that, Abu, be, Sanyasta, renounced, Akila, all sorts, Karmanaha, material duties. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Translation. He will have to suspend all the actions of the senses, even from the outside, and will have to be impervious to interactions of the senses, which are influenced by the modes of material nature. After announcing all material duties, he must become immovably established beyond all sources of hindrances on the path. Purport. Dhritarashtra had attained by the yogic process the stage of negation of all sorts of material reaction. The effects of the material modes of nature draw the victim to indefatigable desires of enjoying matter. But one can escape such false enjoyment by the yogic process. Every sense is always busy in searching for its food, and thus the conditioned soul is assaulted from all sides and has no chance to become steady in any pursuit. Maharaj Yudhishthira was advised by Narada not to disturb his uncle by attempting to bring him back home. He was now beyond the attraction of anything material. The material modes of nature, the gunas, have their different modes of activities, but above the material modes of nature is a spiritual mode which is absolute. Nirguna means without reaction. The spiritual mode and its effects are identical. Therefore, the spiritual quality is distinguished from its material counterpart by the word nirguna. After complete suspension of the material modes of nature, one is admitted to the spiritual sphere. An action dictated by the spiritual mode is called devotional service or bhakti. Bhakti is therefore nirguna, a state one attains by direct contact with the absolute. Read the verse again, the translation. He will have to suspend all the actions of the senses, even from the outside, and will have to be impervious to interactions of the senses, which are influenced by the modes of material nature. After renouncing all material duties, he must become immovably established beyond all sources of hindrances on the path. Om Ajnana Timrandasya Jananchala Shalakaya Shakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Shvam Rupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shigo Shiyuda Padakamalam Shigum Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Saganalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandho Jatpate Gopesha Gopka Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshvare Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamama Haripriye Vanka Kautra Visha Kripa Sindhave Vasha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachari Desatarni Srila Prabhupada Ki. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, not finding his uncle and his aunt, became full of anxiety as he wanted to his duty to take care of them. Of course, Dhritarashtra did so many heinous and bad things, but Yudhishthira Maharaj did not consider that. He considered, yes, we have a great debt to Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, because they brought us up. It's like our grandfather, that because our father was not there, he left prematurely his body, so they took care of us. And of course, is Dharmaraj following all the regulative principles and one of the duties, following all duties, prescribed duties, the Manu Samhita, the Dharma Shastra, full of duties that a living entity has to perform, because we are indebted to our parents, to our grandparents, that anyway, he could not find them because Vidura preached to them, because he wanted to put Dhritarashtra on the path of salvation, the path of liberation. But Dhritarashtra was not a devotee. So putting him on the path of liberation means giving up our attachment to this world and become attached to the spiritual aspect of life. Now, the spiritual aspect of life has three levels, which are described in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Vedanta tat tattva vidas tattvam jnanam advayam. Prameti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sapyate. Great learned sages have concluded that the absolute truth has three aspects: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So that those who attain Brahman realization, the first stage in devotional service, they are called Dhiras, undisturbed by material nature and fixed on the eternal. That, of course, for us devotees, this is only a stage in the process of devotional service. The stage to become free from all contamination and come to the beginning of the spiritual platform. So in our process of devotional service begins with Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta. Nishta is the fifth of the ninth stage. And the fifth stage is Brahman realization. And then you have Ruchi, Asakti. Asakti is Paramatma realization, feeling Krishna in the heart. And then comes Bhava and Prema, that devotion to Krishna. And that is your visa to the spiritual world. Without devotion, you cannot go to the spiritual world. The Dhiras, they can merge with Brahman. But what is this Brahman? That is the Brahma Jyoti, is the body effulgence of Krishna, which fills the space between the material and the spiritual worlds. There you have the Brahma Jyoti. This is lively explained in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. There you can read how Gop Kumar enters the Brahma Jyoti and his experiences. Also Krishna and Arjuna going to rescue the sons of the sons of a Brahmin in Dwarka, which were taken away at birth by Mahavishnu. So they had to go to see Mahavishnu, which is beyond the shells of this universe. And there you see that Krishna, Arjuna with transcendental horses, transcendental cars, they are going to all the shells of the universe. This universe is covered by different shells: a shell of earth, a shell of fire, a shell of air, a shell of ether, and so on, and water. That and finally, when they come out of it at the end, they enter the Brahma Jyoti, and the effulgence is dazzling, very that. And then when they cross the Brahma Jyoti, and then they arrive in at Karnodakashaya Vishnu, lying in mystic slumber. Anyway, that you can read at the end of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. But these Dhiras, they are attaining this Brahman effulgence. Because Dhritarashtra had no faith in Krishna, had no faith, Paramatma no. The only choice was Brahman realization, becoming a Dhira. And of course Vidura knew, I want to put him on the path of liberation. But those who attain this Brahmajyoti, what happens? That so we have, this is from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, the prayers of the demigods to Krishna in the womb of Devaki. And they are praying, Yanyera vindaksa vimuktamaninas tvayastabhavat avisuddha bodhaya aruya kachena parampadam tata patyanta danaditayusya angaya. So it speaks about this impersonalist who want to join, want to merge with this Brahman. They want to realize they are Brahman, and they think Brahman is God. But there's also Paramatma and Bhagavan that they don't know. That they cannot realize that. But to attain this process is very difficult. But it's difficult in this age. It was not difficult in Satya Yuga. Everyone was nearly pure and meditation was quickly achieved. They didn't have to go quickly. They could go quickly to the whole Ashtanga process and attain Samadhi. So the purpose of this impersonal person is, I free myself from all the contamination, and then I can focus on myself, Brahman, because I'm Brahman, and Brahman is God, according to their estimation. But this verse says, in Yerevandakshi Muktamaninas, when they attain that state, they think they are liberated. But it is not real liberation. Real liberation is explained in the 2nd canto, chapter 10, verse 6. Liberation is the permanent situation of the living entity in a spiritual body. And Brahmajyoti is not a permanent situation. So they go to the Brahmajyoti and Vimukta Maninas. They think Maninas in the mind, they think I have attained Vimukta, special liberation, merging with the Brahman. But the demigod said, Tvavasta Bhava Avisuddha Bodhaya. Avisuddha Bodhaya, their intelligence is distorted. Because they don't understand that Brahman is an expansion, is a body of versions of Krishna, the source of of everything. They didn't come to that conclusion. But Aruya Kishena Prampada, with great effort, they try to attain this Brahmajyoti. And this effort was explained in the previous versions here, because Narada Muni appeared and explained what happened. It says, yes, here. First sitting postures and then breathing exercise. That turning the senses toward the absolute personality of Godhead and thus become immune to the contaminations of the modes of material nature, namely mundane goodness and ignorance. So Narada Muni says, turning to the absolute personality of Godhead. But the impersonalists don't believe in him, say they think it's Brahman. But he says to the absolute personality of Godhead. And that's also our process of purification, but not to the breathing process. The breathing process is a mechanistic way to control the breathing, because the soul is imprisoned in 5 and 6 airs, I think. That different vayus, they have different names. And it must be liberated soul must be liberated from the attachment to this world, must be liberated from the lust, anger, greed, and so on. And by breathing exercises, this is a mechanistic way to purify the heart. And it's very difficult, and it takes many lifetimes usually. But this Ashtanga yoga is not only practiced by those Dhiras who want to join merge with the Brahmajyoti. No, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, he describes the yoga process. Yoginam apisarvasam matchanant ratmanam shadvam bachateyamam sami yukta tame mataha. The highest yogi is one who is situated in the heart with me, and is situated with me in the heart in love. So that's the bhakti yogi. The bhakti yogi, he can also use that process to purify and realize that Krishna is in the heart, and finally the entire spiritual world becomes manifested in the heart. So that is Bhagavan realization. But the problem with that process is this Ashtanga process to attain that higher goal is impractical in this age. Nobody can do it. So our way to purify is coming in contact with the absolute personality of Godhead by hearing about him from the Bhagavatam, by chanting his names. So we are also going to that process. That our pranayam is hearing about Krishna. Then we become attached to Krishna and detached from this world. This pratyahara means I'm going inside, and I shut myself from the outside world. But the bhakti yogi is different. The bhakti yogi, he sees Krishna in the outside world and the inside world, everywhere, just by hearing about Krishna and by chanting his holy names. By hearing about Krishna, by chanting his holy names, we come in contact with Krishna. And that contact makes us immune from all contaminations of material nature, like mentioned here. But they do it with a breathing process. And it's very difficult, this process. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, it's very difficult. In the 12th chapter, text 3 and 4, Yet vaksharam anirdesyam avyaktam payapashte sarvatracham asintyam sakutastam achalam tuvam. Here this process of the impersonalist is explained, of these Dhiras. But those who worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, the inconceivable, the unchanging, the fixed, the immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth. By controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such person engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. At last. But Krishna says, Balnam Jnanamanante Jnanmama Pavachte Vasev Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Such jnanis who perform this process, they, after many births, they come to the conclusion that Krishna is the origin of Brahman and Paramatma. And then they become devotees. Because this verse of the Devas here will say, yes, these impersonalists, they vimuktamaninas, they think they are liberation. But it's not real liberation. It's a temporary situation of being situated in the Brahmajyoti. And it's difficult to attain. Aruya kitchena prampadam tatam. It says, after many severe austerities and penances, they finally achieve that situation. But still their intelligence is impure. They achieve they become one with the Brahmajyoti. They enter the Brahmajyoti. And what is their experience? Good. No suffering. Finally, you get it. Peace. I become Prashanatma. Very peaceful. But after a few millions of years there, it becomes very, very boring because there's nothing to do. Because the soul, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, must be active. It must be active. It must do something. And we need relationships. And there are no activities. So what happens? They come back to the material world. They cannot go to the spiritual world because they know they don't have a relationship with Krishna, or if not, they have a relationship with Krishna, but they have forgotten. They have not recovered their relationship. They are halfway in recovering the disease. It's like someone goes to the hospital and he gets cured in the hospital, and then he remains hanging around in the hospital. No, he has to go home and start his normal activities, his work and his job and all these things. So that, and therefore their intelligence is impure. That, and what does Krishna say about this process? Klesiti gedrashte samabhyakta shakta sit samabhyakti igatirlukam dehava avapyate. For those whose mind are attached to the unmanifested impersonal region of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So he said it's klesha. It's just troublesome, this process, very difficult. And this is described here also in the purport. Srila Prabhupada describes this, that they have to get rid of their passion and ignorance, and because this passion and ignorance increases the propensity for hankering of material enjoyment and a strong sense of lust. How do we, Bhakti Yogis, how do we get rid of this passion and ignorance? Every day we sing Nastabraya Zabatra Sunityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavata Tamasvake Bhakta Bhagavata Naistiki, by rendering service to the pure devotee. And hearing daily the Bhagavatam, all what is troublesome to the heart, the modes of passion and ignorance, is removed from the heart. Tatora justamabhava kamalobhasayasiste siterateranavidam stitve sattve prashidati. And then when all this passion and ignorance comes, and one becomes peaceful in goodness, one becomes prasanatma. Das prasanatma is Dhira. That's the stage that Vidura wants him to attain, at least. At least then he's on the path of liberation, may still come back to this material world and finally become a devotee after many births. But it's on the path of liberation. And it said Dhritarashtra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being, with knowledge of his qualitative oneness. So this is the entering, becoming one with the Supreme Brahman. That's the impersonal realization. But for us, this is just the beginning of spiritual life, attaining that stage. Then after that, our heart is pure, and we chant the holy name, we chant the Sudanam, and then love for Krishna develops. And naturally, we go beyond it. We start to see Krishna everywhere. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I'm everywhere. Still, I'm not there. I mean, so Krishna is saying, I'm there as Paramatma, but not as Bhagavan. As Bhagavan, I'm in the spiritual world. I'm different. But I'm not different at the same time. So that we cannot understand with our material intelligence, but spiritually, with our as our spiritual intelligence develops, we can start to understand something from the inconceivable. That so he will the Narada Muni is Trikalagya. He sees past, present, and future. And he said to Yudhishthira Maharaj, in 5 days from now, he will attain the Brahmajyoti. He will attain it. In 5 days from now. So that is very beautiful. But he says to Yudhishthira Maharaj, you should not disturb him. Let him attain that position. At least he's on the path of liberation. So this is the mercy of Vidura, who brings him at least, although he was a very great materialist, but just by the words of Vidura, he took it serious and was put on the path of liberation. So it's never too late to take the path of liberation, never too late to take Krishna consciousness. Even if you are on the verge of death, you can take shelter of Krishna and you will be put on the path of liberation. So this verses helps us to realize that Bhakti Yoga is the highest process. We should not deviate from it. And this realization of Dhritarashtra is such a partial realization that we purify our heart, and we practice also this pratyahara, go inside. When we chant, we should shut us up from the external world and absorb complete in this holy name. If we speak about the Bhagavatam, hear about the Bhagavatam, forget everything else, only the Bhagavatam. That's our samadhi. And then gradually, with that purity, we will start to see Krishna. We will start to see Krishna in the pages of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada says. Therefore, hearing this Bhagavatam is so important. So this is what I could say on this verse. Any question, comments?
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for the class. I really appreciate it. And this topic about Dhritarashtra and my understanding from what your lecture today is that he is just achieving liberation in Brahman. Is that correct? He is not really achieving any devotional service.
Yes, that is correct. And
Okay.
and also the demons killed by Krishna, they go mostly, there are exceptions like Jai and Vijay, but mostly they attain liberation. Liberation means they go to the Brahmajyoti. Devotion to Krishna cannot be forced upon. It's voluntarily. But they get liberation and they get free from all the reactions. It's a great gift. And then naturally, they become, because they are free from all this contamination, they become attracted to Krishna. And we see that in the Bhagavatam. In the beginning of the Bhagavatam, you had Sukadev Goswami. When he came out of the womb, he was running to the forest, and his father wanted him back into the ashram, but he was liberated. He had no attraction for this material world. How, if nothing attracts someone in this material world, how can you attract this person who is liberated? And he sent his disciples to the forest to chant verses of the Bhagavatam from the 10th canto, Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavrititam kalmasapaham, and so on. And when Sukadev heard this, he became attracted. So he's liberated. He has no attraction for this material world. And still he becomes attracted to hearing about Krishna. That means hearing about Krishna is higher than Brahman. Otherwise, he would not become attracted. So that's the next stage. Ruchi, get attraction to Krishna. Nishta is liberation, then Ruchi, and then one comes to Asakti, Krishna in the heart. And this Krishna in the heart realization is the Krishna says, one who is united with me in love in the heart, 647, is the greatest yogi. So the bhakti yogi is the greatest yogi who develops them bhava and prema. Anything else?
Yes, I do have a question because yesterday, oh my gosh. Yesterday, we were discussing the purport before, so from text 55, and it sounds like Srila Prabhupada is saying, here he's saying, he's talking about Dhritarashtra. So he says, in other words, he has to realize that qualitatively he is non-different from the supersoul, and thus he transcends the material sky by his pure identical intelligence, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra by the grace of Vidura and the Lord. So in the previous purport, it kind of sounds like Prabhupada is saying that he did achieve transcendental loving service of the Lord, Dhritarashtra. So that's where I became a little confused, because my understanding from the previous verses is that he was just achieving Brahman, like liberation. But Srila Prabhupada kind of makes it sound like
Where was it in the purport?
it's towards the, like in the very middle of the first part of the purport, after the Mahatattva. He has to merge into the existence of the soul. In other words, he has to realize that qualitatively he is non-different.
Yeah, I just want to find it.
Yeah.
So the living entity, by his desiring to lord it over material nature and declining to cooperate with the Supreme Lord, contacts the sum total of the material world, namely the Mahatattva, and from the Mahatattva his false identity with the material world is developed along with his material intelligence, mind and sense. Yeah, that's a general comment. All this cover is pure identity. By the yogic process, when his pure identity is realized, self-realization, one has to revert the original position by amalgamating the five gross elements and the subtle elements, mind and intelligence, into the Mahatattva again. So we are also doing that as devotees. We chant and we start to identify as a spirit soul and create attachment from this world. By that detachment, we give back the elements to our original source, because we got them from there by the process of attachment. Anyway, that's a little detail. Thus, getting freed from the clutch of the Mahatattva, one has to merge into the existence of the super soul. Yes, but it's not saying Dhritarashtra has done that. That's another thing.
It down like a little bit, like right here towards a little closer towards the end, is saying this is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra by the grace of Vidura and the Lord.
Yeah. So let's see what he's speaking about.
Yeah.
Thus, getting freed from the clutches of the Mahatattva, he has to merge into the existence of the super soul. In other words, he has to realize that quickly is non-different from the super soul, and thus he transcends the material sky. Thus, it's not different from the super soul. That there are two kinds of realizations here. That the impersonalists are monists. They think there is only one soul and I'm the super soul. That is what they think. These are monists.
Okay.
And thus he transcends them and they realize we have the same identity. The same identity. I'm Satchitananda. I realize that. that the self is Sat Chit Ananda, and the self is the super soul and me. That's the same for them.
Okay.
So this is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity, which was attained by Dhritarashtra by the grace of Vidura. This is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity. That's the highest spiritual identity that he could achieve. I am one with the super soul. He did not achieve who he is. Who he is means he did not realize that I'm a servant of Krishna. That's another realization. But that was a great mercy. The Lord's mercy was bestowed upon him in the form of his personal contact with Vidura. Yeah, that's. So he realized that he was qualitatively, he is non-different from the super soul. That was his realization. He did not realize that he did not realize that he was a servant of Krishna.
So then why is Prabhupada saying that this is the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity?
Yeah, that's the highest perfectional development of spiritual identity. Spiritual identity here was explained in the previous verse is non-different from the super soul, qualitatively. That was his realization. That is, and that is the beginning of spiritual life. That if we don't understand our spiritual identity, then we think we are the body. But
isn't that just the second level of realization, like the Brahman, then the Paramatma, and then the Bhagavan?
He has realization of a Dhira. That was explained before.
Okay.
That Vidura would put him on the path of becoming a Dhira. It is not said that Vidura put him on the path of becoming an associate with Krishna in the spiritual world. No, he could not. That, but he attained his pure identity. He realized he's not a body. That is perfection. But he did not realize that this spirit soul is a part of Krishna and is a servant of Krishna, because he was averse to Krishna. That was a problem. But by purification of the heart, he comes to that level. He will come to that level. Maybe not in this life. Therefore, Prabhupada has quoted this verse in the previous purport. Paunam jnanamante jnanamam prabhachante vastev sarvamiti samatma sudurlabha. After many, many births, he comes to the realization that Krishna is the source of everything. And then one is ready to become a devotee of Krishna. But he realized the absolute truth, but only the Brahman aspect. And that is perfection from that's a first stage of perfection. Let us see. Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita. There are 3 levels of perfection, and one the first is the perfect, and then the most perfect, and then the most perfect. The perfect is a verse where Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatna Shustina Kangshin Samsavesha Bhutsamad Bhaktim Lapatepan. That's Brahman realization. And that's the first realization. And that's the realization that Dhritarashtra got here. That the second realization is Ishvara Sarvabhutnam Ritsayuna Ptistati Brahmam Sarvabhutnam Yantra Udani Maya. That Krishna is in the heart of every living entities and conducting the wanderings of all these living entities. That's Paramatma realization. And that's Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmana Kavahasni Sunshev Sapatita Pandita Samadakshina. One sees Krishna in everyone's heart, but it doesn't say that Dhritarashtra had that realization. That because to have that realization, that one must transcend the position of a Dhira. And the highest is man mano bhavamat bhakto machi imam namaskar mama vaishya satyam te pradijoni prayosimi. The highest realization is that one always thinks of Krishna and in love become his devotee. And that's the highest realization. And they are all three spiritual realizations. They are all three stages of perfection. But the first stage means that one realizes one's spiritual identity. I'm not a body. But then one must realize this spirit soul, where does it come from? It's a part of Krishna. And I'm a part of Krishna, so I'm a servant of Krishna. So these are these three stages. So he realized I'm qualitatively one with the super soul in the heart. But he was thinking himself one with the super soul, that's monist. And that's the impersonal idea of the absolute truth, which was already very prominent in the time Lord Krishna was there. And if in the time of Lord Chaitanya, most people were impersonalist. And many on the so-called Bhakti March, they are also impersonalist. That there are people who come to Vrindavan, they present himself as devotees, they chant and so on, but their purpose is to become one with Brahman. Then Krishna is just a step to attain the Brahman, which is higher. So many misunderstandings that they are explained in the scriptures, and all these kinds of bhaktis which are factually false. That here you have the Ramanandis, they are one of them. That I've got all these names, but there are at least 10 groups like that. So understanding spiritual life requires a lot of understanding, a deeper understanding of the spiritual truth, which is explained in the Bhagavatam, and especially also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Does that help, Martin Kelly?
Yes, yeah, that does help. Yeah, thank you so much, Mahesh.
Yeah, I know it's not easy, but we have to understand the deeper points that Prabhupada makes here. But of course, Srila Prabhupada wants us to encourage us to come to the highest platform. And therefore we see the way he writes, also Narada Muni does that. He says he can turn the senses toward the absolute personality of Godhead. That's the normal process, to the absolute personality of Godhead, he says. So Muni is instructing us, but this is not a thing of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is not on that platform. Is on the platform of Dhira. Because this process of Astanga Yoga can be used to attain Brahman, can be used to attain Paramatma, and can be used to attain the Bhagavan level. But it depends on the understanding of the person who practices it and the realization. But devotees do not use that process in Kali Yuga because it's not practical. Our process is hearing the Bhagavatam, chanting. Does that help?
Yeah, that does help. I am curious, because I personally I did live at a yoga ashram and we did practice like pranayam and asanas. And I always did feel that at least pranayam, asanas not so much, but I felt that pranayam was really helpful and it could be a tool that devotees could use. Do agree with that? That it's something that devotees can use, or is it something that can be easily distracted for us?
The 6 Goswamis, it is known that they performed pranayam before chanting Gayatri to calm down the mind and to absorb them in the Gayatri. That so it can have its use, but it's not our spiritual process. It's useful, and I personally, the practice of yoga, especially this breathing exercise, is very helpful. You get up in the morning, go outside, and you take a brief breath, and that stays with you the entire day. That calmness of this deep breath. That so for health, certainly that's also good, and it helps us to concentrate the mind. That's the purpose, to concentrate the mind. But it is not really necessary, but it's helpful.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. Then we will continue with nectar of instruction this evening. Purnachandra.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. And Maharaj, you have few minutes. I have one question.
Yeah.
If you have, otherwise I'll ask later.
No, you can ask.
So Maharaj, thank you very much for nice class. You did mention, if you can again explain how devotees can get rid of passion and ignorance.
Yeah, how to get rid of passion and ignorance. The process to get, well, first, to understand that, we must know the process that causes this passion and ignorance. That's explained in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Dayate visayapum samsanghaste svachayate sanghasayate kama kama krodha vichayate. It starts with dayate, meditation on things in this world, and we become attracted. And we want to exploit it, to enjoy it, and we develop lust. That is how it starts. Now, in these verses today, we say the reverse project, the reverse. We must give up that lust, and we must give up this attachment, and then it disappears. But how to do that? That we become attracted to so many things in this world. How can we give it up? It's practically impossible. But Krishna gives us the process. The process is that one must get param dristva nivartate, a higher taste, something better. And then one forget his attachment, and they will disappear. And that something better is spiritual. Therefore, the way to get rid is, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you must become a Mahatma. Mahatma tumam parta devim prakatim ashrita. So the Mahatma knows how to connect with the spiritual energy. If you are connected with the spiritual energy, all these contaminations start to go gradually, and you become attracted to the spiritual, and you become detached from the material. You have found something better, and you don't want a lower anymore. A devotee was on the highest platform. He doesn't think of, he's disgusted with sense gratification. That's the bodily platform. That's like the animals. So he becomes attracted. So our process is to become attracted to Krishna, and that makes us detached from the material world. And that we find in chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita in the beginning, that you have text 5, 5th chapter, that in the Prabhupada writes, factually, both processes are the same, although superficially one appears to involve in detachment and the other process involves attachment. The attachment for matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. I read it again. The attachment for matter and attachment to Krishna are the same. So our mind is attached to sense gratification. If the mind, if we think of Krishna, Krishna purifies our mind. Therefore, during the chanting, we must absorb ourselves in Krishna and pray to him, please purify my mind. And that is really what will purify us. That Krishna is described in Shir Upanishad as antiseptic and prophylactic. Antiseptic means if you have Krishna in the mind, this passion and ignorance goes away. Antiseptic, as long as you are thinking of Krishna, no new contamination comes in. Because many times we stop chanting and then we become absorbed again in this material world without seeing Krishna and new contamination come in. But no, we have always to be Krishna conscious. That you can't see always that someone is Krishna conscious from the outside. He may think, talk as all other people, but internally, his vision is different. And therefore, we have to be careful not to contaminate us. Second verse of Nectar of Instruction. Atyara Payasha Prajalpaniyamaga, that Jnana Sangas Salalyam Sha, Sadhvir Bhakti Pranashati, 6 activities that destroy Bhakti: overeating, becoming too much attached to things in this world, endeavoring for things that are difficult to get, that speaking about sense gratification and criticizing devotees, that's all going to make our situation worse. No, what should we do? The verse we are now discussing of Nectar of Instruction, enthusiastic. And being enthusiastic, have patience and confidence. Confidence by hearing about Krishna, by hearing from great devotees who became purified and would share their realizations. So that is what we should do. And therefore, we are studying this Nectar of Instruction, which is so important. If we don't get that point, purification will be difficult. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Then we see each other this evening. For me,
Yes.
it will be in the morning, but okay. Hare Krishna. Jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Prabha Maharaj ki.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.